I really enjoyed the Fallout TV show, and I'm very excited and happy that we're getting a second season, but it's not without some flaws. Let's talk about 5 things about the Fallout TV show that fell flat. Let's get into it. Lucy's wasteland transformation meant nothing. Episode 4 of Fallout: The Ghouls is my favorite episode of the series. I even made an entire video about why it's so well executed. But there's one thing that didn't sit right with me. Not in the episode itself, but in what followed. Lucy's journey in the Ghouls is a defining moment for her character. Up until this point, she's been the ideal vault dweller. Optimistic, naive, and believing in the good in people. But after surviving Super Duper Mart, where she's mutilated, covered in blood, and forced to fight for her life, that all changes. She's been hardened by the wasteland, and the show visually represents this transformation. Her once pristine vault jumpsuit is torn and filthy, tied around her waist as she sheds her old identity. Her tank top is stained with blood, and she carries a 10mm now. She's no longer just a vault dweller. She's a wasteland survivor. It's fantastic visual storytelling, something that Fallout has always excelled at. Lucy's new look in Episode 4 signals that she has changed in a way that can't be undone. Except, it is undone. While her outfit still may show signs of her endeavors in the previous episode, her actions are still that of a naive vault dweller. Her encounter with the fiends even mirrors her early naivety, thinking that they're just ordinary people, only for Maximus having to step in and save her. It's a stark contrast to the hardened survivor we saw in the Ghouls, where she took command and had to reluctantly put down Martha. This abrupt reset undercuts what should have been a lasting shift in her character. One would think that having several near-death experiences in the Super Duper Mart would at least help her not freeze up in more near-death experiences. It makes the transformation in Episode 4 feel more like an aesthetic choice rather than authentic character growth. It's possible that this was just a continuity oversight. Fallout had multiple directors and writers working on different episodes, and The Ghouls was the only episode written and directed by Kieran Fitzgerald and Daniel Gray Longino. This can lead to inconsistencies, and maybe this is just one of them. But even if that's the case, it does actually weaken the impact of her journey. Fallout is a franchise built on consequences. In the games, choices shape the world, and our characters evolve based on experience. Literally experience points. Lucy's suffering and survival in the Ghouls should have carried more weight. The wasteland is harsh, and what it does to people shouldn't be so easily erased. The Prydwen's return creates a canonicity problem. When the Fallout TV show was first announced, many fans speculated and worried about how it would handle the established lore of the games. The Fallout universe is often filled with branching choices, multiple endings, and no single playthrough is considered the true canon, or at least not until a sequel or spin-off is released. That's why the Brotherhood of Steel's flagship appearance in Episode 1 was a cause for concern. At first, prior to the first episode ever being released, many thought the show would be introducing a brand new airship, the Caswanon. A Vanity Fair article captioned an image as such. But then, in the same image, the name Prydwen could be just made out on the hull of the ship. This, plus getting more angles of the vessel when the show finally released, made it clear that this wasn't a new metal blimp after all. It was the same airship that appeared in Fallout 4, and that creates a problem. In Fallout 4, the fate of the Prydwen is entirely up to the player. If you side with the Railroad or the Institute, the Brotherhood of Steel's flagship ends up being destroyed. If you join the Brotherhood or side with the Minutemen, it can survive. That means, by including the Prydwen in the TV show, The writers are indirectly confirming one of these endings as canon, either the Brotherhood or Minutemen path. Although many consider the Minutemen ending to be the canon Fallout 4 ending, at least according to a Fallout Q&A I did a long time ago, it can be frustrating for fans who played the game differently to have it potentially be confirmed. One of Fallout's greatest strengths is its ability to let players forge their own stories, to make choices that shape the world around them. But when a show or sequel comes along and locks in a specific ending, it feels like that agency is taken away. You know, some could argue that the Prydwen may have been rebuilt, but that explanation doesn't hold up well. The ship is massive, and its destruction in Fallout 4 is quite absolute. I mean, it's a flaming wreckage. Countless lives lost, etc. The Brotherhood wouldn't exactly be in a position to construct a second airship from scratch, and if they could, it would probably be given a different name. Instead, the show's decision to use the Prydwen outright implies that it was never destroyed in the first place. The frustrating part is that this could have been easily avoided. If the show had stuck with the Kazwanon title, it wouldn't have tied itself to any specific outcome in Fallout 4. It could have been a new Brotherhood vessel, one from an entirely different Brotherhood chapter even. This would at least acknowledge the faction's presence in the wasteland without erasing the player's choice. Instead, by reusing the Prydwen, the show unintentionally limits what can be considered canon, reinforcing a specific outcome in a game and series that is often left open-ended. This might not be an issue for casual viewers who haven't played the games and wouldn't get the reference, but for some longtime Fallout fans, it can feel a tad lame. Fallout series has always thrived on ambiguity, allowing players to speculate about what happens after their choices. The Prydwen's appearance in the show disrupts that balance, making half of the Fallout 4 endings potentially canon, while ensuring that the other two are not. It's crummy. The destruction of New Vegas feels hollow. In the season finale of the Fallout TV show, fans were hit with a surprising and maybe unsettling bombshell. We see Hank cross the horizon, walking towards what could be a ruinous New Vegas. I'll admit it's hard to tell if it's in tatters, or if that's just how New Vegas looks after decades of feuding. However, it's during the credits that we get some stylistic close-ups that do appear to show off the ruined streets of Vegas. The once glowing beacon of civilization in the Mojave, the city that had withstood the Great War and thrived under the rule of Mr. House, or the various factions vying for control, is now nothing more than a crumbling, desolate wreck. While we don't get much context about what happened, the implication is clear. Some kind of war or disaster has ravaged the city, and possibly the entire Mojave. At first glance, this might seem like the same problem as the Prydwen's appearance, an instance of the show forcing a specific version of Fallout history into canon. However, there's an important difference. Unlike Fallout 4's multiple endings, which are directly contradicted by the Prydwen's survival, the destruction of New Vegas doesn't erase what happened in the game. The events of New Vegas still happened. The Courtiers still played a role in shaping the Mojave. The show takes place 15 years after the events of the game, meaning that whatever caused New Vegas to fall occurred well after whatever ending the player chose for the region. Even so, I can't help but feel as though this decision was a bit of a letdown. New Vegas was built around the idea that, for all its corruption and flair, the city was still standing because of the careful planning of Mr. House. It was one of the few examples of a civilization that actually managed to endure, maintaining its pre-war charm centuries later. Seeing it reduced to rubble without any explanation robs the setting of its weight. It's not that New Vegas couldn't fall. In fact, in the Caesar's Legion ending, it does. But it's just that without knowing how or why, its destruction feels like a bit of a cheap shock, rather than a meaningful development. And let me be clear, I'm all for seeing how past locations developed and changed years later. That's why it's so much fun to speculate about what would happen if each faction won the second battle of the Hoover Dam in New Vegas, or finding references to Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. It's cool and fun to learn about what happened in the years between the games. It's interesting to see what sorts of changes were made. And so I'm not particularly upset that New Vegas is destroyed, I just really want to know why or how. It just seems like a gimmicky cliffhanger by doing it at the end of the season. That being said, however, we don't have the full picture yet. Based on the way the season ends, it seems that Season 2 will take us deeper into the Mojave, meaning that we may get answers about what actually happened to New Vegas. If the show takes the time to explore the city's downfall in a way that feels true to the setting and game, this could be justified. But for now, it's an uneasy reveal, one that raises more questions than answers. But maybe that's the whole point. Get people talking, generate buzz, and get them to come back to find out just how New Vegas was reduced to ruins. Shady Sands was clearly moved. I should say that I don't care much for retcons. I don't think there's been a single retcon in the Fallout series that has greatly impacted the overall lore of the game. It's always just minor, inconsequential things. However, the Fallout TV show was not immune to at least one semi-major change. While the Fallout TV show makes some small tweaks to the lore, one of the biggest and most obvious retcons is the relocation of Shady Sands. As the birthplace of the New California Republic, Shady Sands was one of the most important settlements in Fallout history. That is, until it was destroyed some time before the events of the show. In the games, Shady Sands was always depicted as being in a desert east of the Sierra Nevada mountains. While Fallout 2 did move Shady Sands and Vaults 13 and 15 more northwest, these changes weren't as big as the one the Fallout TV show made. In the TV series, it's clear that Shady Sands has been moved much farther south, into the Los Angeles region. I'm not usually too picky about retcons, but this one stands out. The show places Shady Sands within Lucy's early journey, having her go from the Santa Monica Pier, Vault 33, to the ruins of Shady Sands and then to the Griffith Observatory. In the games, that wouldn't make much sense. Shady Sands was much further north. But in the show, it seems to be within the walking distance of LA. While this change likely made the pacing of Lucy's journey smoother, it comes at the cost of already established lore. While it could be argued that the geography of the video games matter very little in terms of storytelling and world building, I would disagree. Shady Sands was a desert settlement, built using a GEC. It was part and thanks to the harsh environment in which the city was established that forced it to become self-sufficient. They couldn't really rely on trade or scavenging to find growth. And so by moving it close to where would have been the LA Boneyard, it changes that dynamic, raising questions about how the NCR developed and what its relationship with pre-war Los Angeles actually was. Of course, for more casual viewers and fans, this probably won't be an issue, but for longtime fans, it's an odd choice, one that ends up making the world of Fallout feel just a little bit smaller. It's possible that Season 2 will expand on the history of this version of Shady Sands, but for now it feels like an unnecessary change done purely for narrative convenience. And that kinda sucks. The Great War should always be a mystery. One of the most debated aspects of Fallout lore is the question of who actually started the Great War. While the answer to this question might already be known, the games have always kept the culprit of the Great War deliberately vague. Some suggest China, others the US, and there are even theories about rogue AIs or corporate interests pulling the strings. But ultimately, in my opinion, the point of Fallout was never about who launched the nukes, but rather why humanity allowed it to happen in the first place. The war wasn't the fault of a single nation or organization, but the inevitable result of toxic nationalism, corporate greed, and unchecked technological advancement. That's what makes the Fallout TV show's handling of the Great War feel disappointing. While it never outright confirms that Vault-Tec launched the nukes, it heavily implies that they were at least involved, or at the very least, saw nuclear war as something they could benefit from. The pre-war scenes with Cooper Howard's wife, Barbara, along with characters like Bud Askins and Hank McClane, paints Vault-Tec as a company that was preparing for the worst, and perhaps even ensuring that it would happen. The idea that Vault-Tec might have wanted the war to occur is certainly in the line with their usual brand of corporate evil, but taking it a step further to suggest that they may have been directly responsible for the bombs falling shifts the narrative in a way that just doesn't sit right with me. Part of what makes the Fallout universe so compelling is that there's no singular villain to blame for the apocalypse. It wasn't just one country, one faction, or one corporation. It was the systemic failure of humanity as a whole. That ambiguity is what gives Fallout some of its depth. By suggesting Vault-Tec may have actually started the Great War, the show risks simplifying that message. It turns a complex commentary on consumerism, militarism, and human self-destruction into a more straightforward, super evil corporation caused the end of the world story. While Vault-Tec has always been portrayed as this monstrous and mysterious big bad, making them the culprit takes away from some of the grander themes of the franchise. Now, to be fair, the show doesn't outright confirm this theory. There is no, we here at Vault-Tec launched the first nukes, but it does leave just enough room for doubt. Even the implication that the mystery of the Great War's origins has an answer at all feels like it goes against the spirit of the series. I think that some things in Fallout are better left unknown, and the cause of the apocalypse is one of them. And that wraps up 5 things I think fell flat from Season 1 of the Fallout TV show. Again, the show has very few flaws. It's a great Fallout adaptation, but also a great TV series overall. These are just a few nitpicks that I would have liked to have been changed or omitted. Let me know what you think. But that's all from me today, folks. If you liked the video, be sure to share and subscribe, join the Discord. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.